this show.
Alrighty. G'day guys, welcome to episode 001 of the Bradley J. Driver Experience. I'm your host, Bradley Driver. You can call me Brad. And today I'm super excited. It's the first one. We're kicking off with a guest that when I sat down and looked at a list of people I wanted to have on, obviously I was intrigued to get local people on who are doing exciting things. And my first thought was this guy.
Oh, thanks,
It's basically, I'm going to introduce him very well in a minute, but I think when I look at local business and people who are doing well in that space, I like to see people who have got great community engagement, great customer engagement, and I think you guys scream that, as well as I love the product too, which is super important for me to have you on here. You've also got a very interesting life story, which we sort of got into sort of a week or two ago when we sat down and had a proper chat about all of this. So ladies and gentlemen, Lachlan Stevens from his Boy Elroy. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it. I made the New Year's... I said it the other day, it's not a New Year's resolution. It's a New Year's goal to kind of put myself out there a little bit more.
100%.
And I'm glad to be on your podcast as the first one. Yeah,
mate, we're kicking it off, and it's exciting. And the thing for me is, I look at what you've done with His Boy. I think it's a very successful business. For those of you who don't know His Boy Elroy, we're talking. The title of this episode will actually be Beers, Burgers, and American Sports Culture. Yeah. Because I think that almost in 3 words or 3 phrases kind of gives a really good sum up of what is happening over there at the restaurant bar. But it's basically a bar restaurant where these guys have got a real twist on, I guess, the American culture of burgers, fries, wings. You give it away. Tell the people what the business is about.
Yeah, so it is beers, burgers, and the bar aspect, and of also the sporting culture. But I guess from a company's perspective, we frame it under the banner of 3 values: so community, authenticity, and loyalty. And every decision we make regarding the business is framed within those core values. But basically, we view it as it is a business, but we also view it as a social enterprise. So it's your stock standard burger restaurant, which plays sports throughout the day.
Not stock standard. They're fucking amazing.
Yeah. Well, conceptually it is. If you don't understand if you see it at the surface level, you see burgers, beers, and sports. But if you dive underneath, we've successfully been able to build a community of people through the sports arm of the business, or through the burger arm of the business, or through the beer arm. And certainly that's our focus for 2020.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think, looking from the outside in, has really impressed me about the way that you guys run, is your social's great. Like, I think around footy season, sporting season, you've been really good at engaging the community in sports, which then I think makes them more comfortable coming in to eat, to drink, to engage with you guys as staff.
Yeah, so we bought the business of Ben and Naomi Hudson. They own Lee and Me, and they did a fantastic job at building this brand and building the kind of, I guess, the scaffolding. And of course we saw opportunity in kind of diving into that community and building those communities from a sporting perspective, especially on social, at a really authentic community level. So we, for example, NFL season, we set up a private Facebook group. And rather than hitting the masses with such a specific message, because we have a whole heap of demographics, whether it's families, whether it's young couples, and whether it's sports nuts. Some people might like NBA, some people might like NFL, some people might like rugby league. So our messaging on our main socials can get lost when you're speaking about specific subjects. So we have a concept of building these small pockets off our normal social, where we can have authentic dialogues with our customers of that particular demographic.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's really important for any local business to continue to grow, is to have that relationship. But also I think one thing that you've mastered, and I think definitely I've sort of been, when Ben and Naomi are great people, I really get on good with them too, have a bit of banter with Ben over social all the time. And I went there a bit when they owned the business. I've probably been more involved in the last year, and I think it's off the back of how you've engaged with people. I think it's been really good. But also, we first met, I'm pretty sure, was at the Illawarra Hawks season launch.
Yeah,
at the Sage.
Yeah, it was. And that's kind of like the Hawks is the relationship we've got with those guys is something, is probably one of my highlights over the last 9 months of owning the business. And how we've successfully engaged with that community of fans in that real authentic way, and to be able to kind of, I guess, rustle up support and pull from their supporter base and plonk them in his Boy Elroy, but do it in an authentic way.
Oh, 100%.
And the Illawarra Hawks, I guess, we like to partner with businesses and organisations that hold very similar values to us, so community, loyalty and authenticity. And I think there's nothing better or no better example than the Illawarra Hawks and their story and their history. And we've successfully launched a brand, Snake Pit Lager, off the back of that, which is a local collaboration between Five Barrels Brewing, Illawarra Hawks and his Boy Elroy. And we wanted to kind of create a product that screamed kind of, okay, we're about craft beer, but we're also about community. Yeah. And we've got those three strong community institutions almost coming together to release this beer.
Yeah, and I like that. I think it's creative. It's also a great way to get people in who love the craft beer, that sort of thing. But it's nice to see the collaborations locally as well that support other businesses, and I think that's really important too. And so I think, mate, you're doing an amazing job there. We'll get a little bit more onto what's happening event-wise coming up soon. Yeah. But first I want to touch on sort of where you are now. His Boy Elroy, owner, operator, business is doing very well, but cast back and just tell us the life journey.
So it's a little bit random. I bounce around. From someone looking outside in, they might look at me and go, oh, that bloke just doesn't know what he wants to do, and he chops and changes all the time. And certainly my wife Selena kind of thinks the same, but she's, over the years, she's come to really understand what I'm all about. And it's just about, like, basically, if I can get to 70, 80 years old and look back and say, geez, you've had a fucking pretty good life and you've done this, 100%. that, the other, that's what it's all about. And that's where fulfillment in life comes from for me. And I think experiences and learning and consistently trying to challenge myself, that's where that special sauce is. So I grew up in country New South Wales, in a town called Kempsey, in northern New South Wales.
I stayed in Kempsey on the way back from my road trip.
No, I don't like admitting I'm from Kempsey, but it was a stock standard, simple life. Have a twin brother, and we moved down to Wollongong to both go to uni. I studied a Bachelor of Creative Arts, majoring in visual arts. And it was completely random, but I kind of like that conceptual kind of nature and like thinking about things. Yeah. and making stuff that is my thoughts, and that kind of process of building. But also I was conflicted at the time. I wanted to join the army, and it was something that I wanted to do when I was in school, but I didn't think I was ready from a maturity perspective.
It's a massive step, right?
Yeah,
so you're 18, 19 at this time?
Yeah, I was 17 when I went to uni, and I got halfway through my degree, and I started kind of getting the itchy feet and wanting to kind of move on. But I don't like quitting with things, so I stuck it out for 3 years. And then as soon as I was done, I enlisted in the army as a combat engineer. So basically like construction, demolition, minefield clearance, and
that in itself is a fucking terrifying word, hey?
Yeah. Well, but like when you're in that situation, when you're around the boys, and when you're in that kind of culture, and everyone's supporting in their own ways, it doesn't become hard. When you train, it doesn't become terrifying. It becomes exciting. That adrenaline is a great thing. So in 2010, I deployed to Afghanistan as a REO, or a reinforcements. What that means is a couple of sections from our unit in Afghanistan copped a hiding. There was a couple of deaths and there was a couple of injuries. And I went in as reinforcements along with a couple of friends, and my job was a high-risk searcher. So basically it's waving a mine lab or a metal detector and searching for improvised explosive devices and weapons caches. So, like, of course, there's that nerves, but originally it was like it's exciting, and you're doing something that you never thought you'd ever be doing, and it's that kind of thirst and that challenge of making a mark in history, which was exciting to me, and serving my country. And got back from Afghanistan in 2010. And trained up and went back again over in 2012. And that by that time, the war in its current sense in Afghanistan was moving to another stage. When we were over there, it was a little bit more offensive. We were mentoring the Afghan National Army, and it was boots on the ground. 2013 onwards, it started to kind of draw itself down into more of a let's sit back and watch type role. Of course, there's other offensive ops done by special forces, but certainly as a combat engineer, it was less about being on the ground. And for me, I thought, well, now's the perfect time to kind of move on to another challenge. But
can I ask before you move on? Sorry to interrupt. How are you feeling? So if you cast back to that moment, so you're in between tours, you've had your first. How are you feeling when you know you're going over for your second? Are you looking forward to it because of the culture that's been created amongst those guys, or is it not so much? And
no, I think if you ask 99.9% of servicemen and women if they would like to go overseas, and they would say yes. It's just something about it. I didn't really understand it, and it's only until kind of a couple of years ago that I actually understand it. But I liken it to say a football player playing State of Origin. They're actually playing in the big leagues. They're challenging themselves in this in this high pressured environment, and there's so many feelings and emotions associated with that, and it's all real, it's authentic. So and that adrenaline and that excitement is what drove drove me between 2010 and 2012. And that thirst to kind of get back over there and actually do my job for real rather than training, which is what 99% of the time you spend in the Defence Force is.
That's training. What I was going to ask. So is it when you're over there, so say you're spending, in those tours, how long are you spending in Afghanistan at one stretch?
So in 2012 I spent 6 months in Afghanistan.
So that's a long time. So what does a week look like?
We were mobility support out to forward operating bases. So we were in the main base and we would drive in convoys out to forward operating bases to resupply. But our job was the lead car, and when we'd come to say a vulnerable point where there's a high chance of IEDs in that area, whether it be the terrain leading you into a choke point, or whether it be a history of IEDs or explosions in that area, or whether it be intelligence collected, we would jump out and search that area and deem it safe, and then drive through and move on to the next choke point.
Can I ask, in your time, is there any times that it was unsafe, that you found stuff?
Yeah, so there's a whole heap of kind of examples that I could refer to. Like I found a couple of IEDs. Yeah. One massive one, it was a 30-litre palm oil container, and with a remote control. 30 litres. Yeah, so 30. They use a homemade concoction. It's not military grade explosive. It's ammonium nitrate and diesel mixture in a big container with a point where there might be a pressure plate that sets it off when you drive over it or step on it. It also might be remote controlled, so it could be like a garage door opener that they would press and it would detonate. We have electronic countermeasures that is our fail safe. But that's a couple of examples of like the kind of like things that go on there. There's been examples where the Taliban would chuck out metal shavings on the road, so it sends our metal detectors into haywire just to slow us down. Yeah. So we would be laying on the ground, crawling and poking with the mine prodder, and getting kind of 5 meters in an hour.
That's full on.
Yeah, so it is quite full on, but as I said, like it's extremely rewarding, and it definitely gives me a better perspective on life, and it continually drives me now. And I unlike a couple of friends who's unfortunately kind of succumbed to the pressures of mental health, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I look at it as a positive experience in my life. Yeah. And where there is friction in life and where there is pressure in life, that's where you develop as a person.
100%.
And I guess that whole analogy of diamonds are made under pressure. I really love that, because that's where you learn, that's where the magic happens, that's where you learn a lot about yourself and your capabilities. Yeah. So when I then go on and say buy a bar, which I have no experience in, from on paper, and when people might say, or I might hear, oh, well, what are they doing in hospitality, or what are they doing in this industry when they don't have experience? I think back, this is what I'm doing internally. I think back and go, you know what? Fuck them. Like I've done this in my life. Surely it's not harder than this.
100%.
So, and that's what kind of drives me.
I think it's funny you say that. I think there's a real, like you said, there's a real misconception that different industries require different experience. And I think what a lot of people forget is life experience a lot of the time is actually more important than specific experience in a field.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm the same. I've done my few bits and pieces here, there and everywhere. Sort of came out of school, personal trainer, ran a little small business. So I've got respect for you and what you're doing at His Boy, and then found myself in real estate and now side hustling with this sort of stuff. But I think if you look at all, they're all completely different. But there's parts of each job where you take those positive traits and you're able to apply it to the next one. And I think a big part of that, which probably is a good little segue onto the next step from coming home to the army, is leadership. Yeah.
Well, and that's I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. You're grounded in values, and that's what the Defence Force did. It adds a framework of, say, mateship and integrity and ownership through values in individuals. And if you understand the what values do conceptually in a life or in a business, then you just apply it, and that's what I've done. So I left the army and got a job with Merlin Entertainments as a senior operations manager. And my partner, Selena, she worked at Merlin Entertainments in public relations at the time. And she said, there's this little job up at Illawarra Fly as a senior operations manager. And my first reaction was, what's a fucking senior operations manager? And I read into it, and a lot of the job description read like an army job description in that there was a lot of leadership kind of qualities. And I think a lot of that's what sets the difference between a leader and a manager. So there's 3 arms in the army. There's command, so you go there and do this. There's management, like organisation or organising your unit or organising a roster. And then there's leadership. And that's what managers struggle. I think a lot of people struggle with leadership. Yeah. Because you can read a book about leadership and you can understand it conceptually, but to put it into practice is a whole different beast.
100%.
Because it requires a strong foundation of values to guide you through your job.
And I can imagine it requires a huge amount of empathy and understanding too, because you can imagine leading in the army is, whilst very similar, going to be a different game to leading in a business like that, where you've got different personalities, different culture. Yeah. Well,
in the army, you have command, leadership, and management. Command doesn't exist in private enterprise. Leadership and management do, because people don't respond well to commands, nor should you need to command. Yeah. If you are a good leader, you don't need to command. Bad leaders are commanders. In private enterprise. In the army, it's different because there's situations where you need to command. You need to just tell people what to do. On the footy field, captains need to be able to command and tell people what they need them to do, because it's instantaneous. In private enterprise, you need leadership.
No, I agree. So from there, how long did you spend at the Illawarra Fly?
So I was up at Illawarra Fly for around a year and a half. During that time, I worked at a couple of their other attractions in Otway, down in Melbourne, at Otway Fly, Treetop Adventures, and also up at Wildlife Sydney Zoo as an operations manager up there. So
did you live in Melbourne?
No, I just went down there it was a seconded role, so I went down there for a couple of months.
Yeah. Okay, nice. And then from there, the opportunity then comes up to purchase the business, or
no, not from there. I then moved up to Sea Life Sydney Aquarium.
Yes, correct.
As the head of operations.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I went to from an attraction that did around 60 to 70,000 guests per year to an attraction that did 1.6 to 1.7 million guests per year. So it was quite a big jump. But I, to be honest, I love the organisation. I love Merlin Entertainment. But I was getting a little bit kind of over working for the man. I thought, well, I'm flogging myself for someone else. Let's start flogging myself for myself. So that brings us to his Boy Elroy, finally.
Yeah. And can I ask, rude question, but how old are you now?
32.
32.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for a lot of people, I guess that's scary because you're at a point in your life where you're married, you're making a big career change or move. And I actually spoke about this yesterday with a mate. We're speaking about how people get to that age where they begin to fear change. And for me, I think it's unreal that at that age past 30, which a lot of people signify as an age where you just stay and you become stable in whatever you've found and are doing. And it probably would have been easy to stay in a big business where you're doing well and performing. But when you then get this idea that, okay, I want to create my own thing, or not even create, but grab something and make it my own. What were you looking at in terms of buying a business? Was it purely hospitality, or were there other avenues you looked at?
No, to be honest, it's not just hospitality. I think there's people that possess that entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. And I was exactly in that position where I was getting on 30. Well, I was 31 years old, and I was at the stage where I'm like, oh well, like security is important, but let's just take finance. And it does matter, like finances does matter, and that security does matter, but also happiness, like I put above money.
100%.
And I think like one thing, if you have the opportunity to do that, and I'm not like, some situations are different, and some people are forced into having to be secure because they have kids, mortgages, and we were fortunate enough to not be in that position. So I chose happiness over finances. Yeah. And happiness comes from that entrepreneurial spirit for me. That idea of taking something from point A to point B. Yeah. And that's an underlying theme in my life, I guess, is I want to kind of take something. I want to get from point A to point B. Yeah. And I want to kind of be in control of that. Yeah. Whether it be getting from point A in Afghanistan to point B in Afghanistan, or whether it be taking his boy from point A to point B. Whether that's in hospitality or whether it's in a different industry, it doesn't really matter. The struggle I had, it had to be an entry-level industry, of which hospitality is. Yeah. And what was important when we're doing appraisals on businesses and is not looking purely at the profit and loss statements, it's looking at the brand. Yeah. And that's how I assess whether a business is good or not, is how strong the brand is, or if the brand has potential. And that's what we saw in his Boy Elroy. So it was less about the profit and loss. Yeah. If there's a strong brand, there's opportunity. And that's what kind of led us towards his boy. I
think branding is everything now. I think, especially in a world where technology is at our fingertips, at every request, and everything you want to know about a brand or a business is literally asking Siri away, or just typing and searching on Google or Instagram or Facebook. And I think it excites me that what I can see, and you said it before, happiness for you sits above financial security. And it's similar for me. I've got very similar values, and I've spoken about it a lot this year in how important I think happiness is. I think it's the best return on investment for any person in business, because I think whilst short-term financial gain can be attractive, long-term it fizzles out, where happiness over the long stretch and the long term will actually have you far superior financially in the end, I believe. And one thing that I can see that you're actually speaking your truth and it's authentic and it's real is every week I look at your business and there's something new that you're incorporating, which doesn't necessarily mean financial gain. And I'm thinking about what we discussed with the mental health and what we're going to bring up in a minute. But I look at that and I think you're not doing that for any profit. There's no real increase in business numbers or anything like that, but it's rather because you're genuinely so happy doing what you're doing and you're interested and you want to continue to grow, that these ideas flourish and tend to succeed whenever you implement something.
Well, a lot of it, and I mentioned it earlier, we're not a business, we're a social enterprise.
Yeah.
And I'll keep on saying this because this is our kind of whole strategy in a nutshell. And if I had started a business from scratch, I would have had to focus on the finances. And I probably wouldn't have been successful if I'm going to be completely honest. But we've hit something at pace. And we've found a business that wasn't in the red, and it had momentum. We just had to. I think I said it to you yesterday, the other day, but it was like a snowball at the top of the hill. It just needed to be pushed down that hill. And we're starting to push it down that hill through different incentives and different strategies, all within those values and that framework. And that then just builds that momentum because it's authentic and because it's community led. And we've got our finger on the pulse of what matters to people. And yes, we're doing things, but it's all calculated.
So tell me what's happening at the moment, event-wise. I know I'm going to be there on Monday for the Superbowl party, which I'm keen for. That's going to be busy, I can imagine. It's busy on a regular day, let alone at the Super Bowl day. Talk to me about events coming up, what you guys have going on.
So, got a few things going on actually. So, if we look at those three arms that I and you mentioned at the start, sports, beers, and burgers. Or food. So, from a sports perspective, we have the Super Bowl, and then we'll transition into the NBA and rugby league. For the beers thing, we're launching our first beers and bites. So that's every month we have a brewer of the month, and this month's Capital Brewing Company, and they're coming down to do beer education with our customers, and we're pairing our food with that, and that will happen on a monthly basis. And from a food perspective, in March we'll most likely be launching a vegan menu to cater for that ever-growing kind of demand. And from a social enterprise perspective, we've launched Barstool Blokes, which is a men's mental health initiative aimed at kind of providing a forum from a social perspective, a forum where guys can come and just hang out, chew the fat, drink some beer, talk some sports, and also know that if they wanted to talk about something that they're dealing with from a mental health perspective, they can without being judged.
And I think it's awesome. I seen it last night when you flicked me an invite to the event, and I think those sort of initiatives, I just really respect the way that the society is moving now around open conversation and man, the reason I've started this whole podcast is I think the power of conversation is huge.
Yeah.
One positive conversation can change your life. One negative one can ruin your mindset. And I think the more of these positive and uplifting conversations we have can only better benefit more people. And it's an amazing segue into episode 2 of the podcast because I've actually got a brand coming on to talk purely men's mental health. So it's funny that happened. When you flicked it through last night, it's almost like the stars that aligned in the way that we were thinking quite similar. But I'm excited, and I want to talk a little bit of banter now. I think, like I said, the business is all about American sports culture. I think the culture of Australian sports is strong there too. And I know you guys, especially last season with the NRL, I was definitely more engaged than I had been in years past because of the banter over social, your little polls on who was going to win certain games and that sort of thing. Tell us a little bit about your teams in each sport. So NFL, is there anyone you follow?
NFL, like I'm not a huge fan, like some of our employees are, but I follow Seahawks.
Okay. Yeah. Any reason in particular?
No reason whatsoever. No, and we spoke about this. Like the rise in American sports culture is huge, and it's just getting bigger. And I think Australian kind of sports culture is been tarnished over the years, whether it be from a cricket perspective in the scandal with Warner and Smith, and the sandpaper. Or whether that be from an NRL perspective and blokes pissing in their mouth and doing crude things to dogs. It's I think you don't see that. Of course, that kind of culture exists in every sport, but we don't see it. We see the glitz and the glamour of American sports, and like Before I bought his Boy Elroy, I was getting around in a Raiders hat that I bought from Neglected Society. I didn't even follow the Raiders. Yeah. But I like the hat. And you see that all the time.
You know what's funny? I think we touched on it before, how important branding is. And I think what they're very good at in America with sport is they're very good at allowing players to personally brand themselves. They're also very good at branding as teams. And I think we lack that here in Australia. I think, like you said, you're more likely to see someone walking around in a Oakland Raiders hat than you would in a Canberra Raiders hat because of the way they brand the sport. Yeah.
And that, the Raiders hat has a cultural identity, whereas the Canberra Raiders hat, it doesn't really have a cultural impact. Yeah. It might in Canberra, and it might in Canberra when they're winning. Yeah. But you come to a St George Illawarra game when they're losing, and there's 2,000 to 4,000 people in the stadium. Yeah.
I think it's something we've really got to improve, and I think it comes down to probably affordability too. Yeah. I like, and that's one other thing I'll touch on. I like what you guys have done from the way that you've engaged your community with their sport. I know if you go and you watch an Illawarra Hawks game, there's certain discounts you get for them coming to the restaurant that night and grabbing a beer or and burger, whatever it is that your little deals are. I know you're also very good at one thing that I thought was genius was now if you drive into Wollongong Central, you'll see a massive billboard. The biggest thing, and we spoke about it, the one thing that everyone hates about Wollongong Central is it costs money to park, it's expensive, and people hate that because you can go for free at Shell Harbour. And then these guys come in and go, well, we'll pay for your parking if you come in and you have a burger. So I think that's an amazing way of engaging people to come into your business, but also rewarding people for supporting your business.
Yeah, well, we understood that it comes back to the community point. Our fingers are on the pulse of, and we're kind of directly engaging with a hot topic within the region. And we will build an advertisement or a promotion around that topic. but also we walk up to Wollongong Central in the food court and it's always busy, and people are lining up and going and eating KFC or eating McDonald's. So they're price driven people. So we offer a price driven promotion and pinch that portion of the audience.
Yeah. I like that. All right, another question. So it's Friday night. You've had a massive week. Friday night definitely isn't the end of the week for you. I know that. But if Lachlan Stevens was back in the customer seat and walked into his boy after a big week of work, what beer are you ordering? What burger, chips, chicken combo? What's the order?
It would have to be a snake pit lager, of course, and a Heisenberger. So,
Heisenberger. What's a Heisenberger?
So that's our spicy chicken burger. It's good to go.
Actually, I heard a lot of people get around that. I'm massive around the popcorn chicken at the moment with the sauce.
Yeah.
Mate, that's done some damage on Uber Eats, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, look, obviously I think the business is really moving in a great direction. What's in store in 2020 and beyond for his boy? I know there's obviously more and more ventures coming up and opportunities you're looking at. Yeah. What does the next year look like?
So the first quarter of the year, we're focusing on collaborations with other local businesses. Yeah. Followed by looking at other opportunities, whether it's to expand his Boy Elroy either north or south, or whether it is to purchase other strong brands and add them to our portfolio. But yeah,
it's amazing. I think that's really, really impressive for a year in, because are we a year in yet?
9 months. So
9 months.
We've definitely picked up that momentum, and as I said, that snowball is rolling down that hill at pace, which is great. We just need to look at ways we can keep it rolling, and the second is we also need to look at diversification and moving our brand in the direction of where we think opportunity is.
Okay. Tips for the Superbowl?
I'd like to say San Fran, just because our venue manager Daniel is a mad fan, and I think he'll call in sick if his team loses. But Kansas City, I can't go past them.
I'm on that train at the moment. I'm a Rams guy, but I love Mahomes. Yeah. And I reckon they're on fire. But I think it's going to be an amazing game. What time does Super Bowl kick off at the shop? So
we're open from. We'll be there from 10 if anyone wants to come down there. We're only taking walk-ups. However, it kicks off at around 10:30.
Okay, cool. And where do we find his Boy Elroy?
So that's it's in the mall on Kira Street. So next to Snitz, Guzman, and the Bavarian. It's just up the road from those guys.
But keep walking past those and go to his boy.
Yeah, of course.
Really appreciate you coming on, mate. Like I said, it's for me. This I think is an amazing platform for us to share ideas. I think to inspire other people. There's a lot of people that, especially now, the growing cafe culture, restaurant culture in Wollongong. I think it's on the up, and there's a lot of people that want to get into doing what you're doing. I think hearing the way that you've done this without, as we said, any hospitality experience, but rather reflecting back on those roles in other companies and other facets of your life, like the army, and taking leadership, and I think creating, like I said, not creating, but pushing that snowball down the hill and really running and thriving with this business. It's exciting to see. We want to continue to make this platform an ability for people to share ideas, share inspiration. That's what this is all about, creating that conversation. Is there anything you want to leave off on?
No, I think you covered it all. I've probably said too much.
Nah, mate, perfect amount. Thank you so much for coming on. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you at the next episode. Coming up very soon. We appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, this is episode 001 of the Bradley J Driver Experience. Lachlan Stevens, his Boy Elroy, go check him out in town. I'll say the best burger in town. I don't drink beer, but I've heard it's fucking very impressive. So we'll catch you at the next one.
Cheers, guys.